Hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Psychic Inside Show. My name is Joelle, and I'm the Viberarian. I'm host for this show and other programs here on the Viberary Radio Network, and I'm so glad that you are joining me this evening. You can find all of our programming on Blog Talk Radio at the website blogtalkradio.com/theviberary, and that is Viberary. Every Tuesday I'm here on the Psychic Inside Show, and our goal on this program is to explore what it looks like for one to discover that they have psychic gifts and abilities. And so each week I bring on a special guest who is here to share with the listening audience about their unique experience and their path that they took as things unfolded for them. Our show line, if you are interested in calling with a question for our guest, is 646-668-8988. And you can just press 1 if you have a call or you wish to contribute to the conversation, or if you have a question for the guest of the evening, definitely press it and I'll be to you as soon as possible throughout the show. Also, there is a chat room that is open during the program. You can access it through the Blog Talk Radio page for the episode, and I will also try to answer questions and field from the listening audience that's listening from your computers any questions that you might have. Now, I've got a community that I put together. I like to call it the Good Vibe Tribe, because we all know that we're vibrational beings and our vibe attracts our tribe. So I've got a community of like-minded people who are gathering on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and you can find me by using the handle @the_Viberarian, and that's THE, V as in vibration, IB. E as in energy, RARIAN. Now, we're sharing information that is positive, uplifting. You'll find articles about current events and things that are going on, awesome pictures and inspiring moments that people capture out. Please tag me. Put Good Vibe Tribe in your hashtag or get lifted in your hashtag so that I can find it, and I'll make sure and spread a little bit of that viral web love around so that we can all be uplifted. Now, I just truly appreciate having an opportunity to come on the radio each week, and I would like to thank our sponsors for the month, Stacey Mullen with Stacey Mullen Natural Hair Care here in the Atlanta area, specializing in locks, braids, and all manner of care for your natural hair, and also the Fillmore Center for Rehabilitation and Wellness. They are sponsoring our programming this month, and I'm just truly grateful for their contributions to bringing this program to you. Now, my guest this evening is a gentleman who I have seen in the Atlanta area. If you have ever gone to the Big Psychic Fair, which is kind of an institution here in the Atlanta area, it's up in Roswell, Georgia, the first weekend of every month, and it's hosted by Gloria Parker, and I'm pretty sure she's on at least maybe her second decade of hosting these fairs up there. And I love it because you get an opportunity to sit down and have readings with various people. And over the years, I saw this gentleman kind of quietly sitting up in one of the corners, kind of out of the main pathway. And he always would smile so brightly at me. And at one time, I sat down and had a reading with him, which was very, very helpful. It was probably almost 2 years ago now, when I was really at a turning point in my life. And he provided such really calm and peaceful guidance that he's always kind of stuck in my head. So as I was looking at people to be sure I had a conversation with on the show, I said to myself, I need to go and find Preston. So I'm talking about Preston Cook. Preston is a local psychic medium here in the Atlanta area. He has been providing services at the Blue Barn and also at the West Georgia Spiritual Living Center and all over town. And so he has quite a following of people who responded when I posted that I would be having on the show. And so I'm just really excited to welcome you to the show tonight. To our listening audience, I'd like to introduce Preston Cook. Preston, how are you?
I'm fine, and thank you. That's so beautiful.
Well, your
beautiful.
energy is
Thank
beautiful. Your energy is beautiful, and I'm really so excited. Now, for those of you who don't necessarily travel the psychic circuit, if you will, or aren't familiar with psychic fairs, these are places where you can go and find dozens, sometimes, if not more, depending on the size of the fair, of people who are offering reading services with their gifts to be able to provide short readings for people in a very much a public space. Now, one thing that I've noticed, I am an African American, and one thing that I noticed over the years is that there were not as many males that I would see out at psychic fairs. It was definitely a lesser percentage, and then even smaller percentage of the males that were there than were people of color. So it really caught my eye when I saw you starting to attend at the Blue Barn, Preston, because honestly I have not seen a lot of black males out reading at these kind of events. But I know that spiritualism is not something that is unique to any one particular community. Have you found yourself, living in Atlanta, which is a very diverse community, what have you found as an African male self-professed psychic? What has been your experience with that?
Okay, what has my experience with that? Well, it's not something that I talk about all the time to a lot of people, because people understand it, don't understand it, or have fear about it. And sometimes I find, especially in maybe our community, sometimes it could be maybe I would say the belief system kind of push it away, or not so much about it. But when you think about it, when you go back to the generation of like my grandmother, great-grandmother, when I was a kid coming up, they would talk about seeing spirits as a common thing. They wasn't fear of it. It was just something that was common. And I remember as a kid coming up listening to my great uncle at the time, who would talk about his sister supposedly was born with a veil and she can see spirits as he's going way back to time when they horse and buggies, when they were walking to maybe a Bible meeting at church, and how they would have to pull over on the side of the road because there was a spirit or spirit of family were coming through or passing through, and the sister said, just pull off on the side of the road to let them come through. There wasn't no fear, there was a respect. So, yeah.
Now, when you were growing up then, so you had family members who talked about seeing spirit, and were you also then aware that you were seeing spirit at a young age?
Well, what was interesting with me, my Uncle Bill, that was my great uncle, I was maybe 7, 8, 9 years old at the time. He would always talk about stories of his childhood, and it always would end up talking about ghosts or cemeteries or people in the casket, even though I was scared. But at the same time, I would just continue to talk to him because there was a deep interest there that I couldn't understand. And I found out he was like my grandfather, because my mother's parents had passed when she was a little girl, and basically they raised my mother. So I was just fascinated just with the old stories that he talked about, how life was during that time, especially during the time a little after, slavery. And I just loved the part. One of the big things he always talked about was spirits, seeing spirits, people seeing spirits, spirits sitting on somebody's bed, spirits giving somebody messages. My grandmother down here in South Georgia, at night, back in the day, her and my aunt and relative would be sitting on the porch at night, and they would talk about spirits. Different spirits would come around that would visit and give messages. It was like a common conversation. And I was somewhat intrigued by that. And as a kid, scared at the same time, but very much intrigued by it, but just didn't quite understand why. My dad had experienced, when he was a kid growing up, that a relative on my grandmother's side of the family, she passed away some years before my dad was born. And my dad was sitting up in the house, and he said this beautiful lady just walked into the room and sit down next to him and was playing with him. And all of a sudden she just disappeared. And he went out. My grandmother sat on the front porch, and he went out to my grandmother and said, hey, there was a lady in the house, and we were playing together. And he described to my grandmother exactly what the lady looked like, exactly what she was wearing. And my grandmother, back in the country, first kind of denied it to make sure he wasn't telling a tale. And she told the same story to my great-grandparents. And then in the evening, I understand they would all go over to my great-grandparents' house across the country road for dinner. And then they had my dad tell a story at the dinner table. And then they didn't tell my dad till maybe several days later what he experienced. So the lady that came here to visit, well, we know you weren't lying because, first of all, she's a cousin of yours that passed away, I guess, of childbirth. And what you describe, her clothing, is exactly clothing that we buried her in. And I guess she came back to, so he said, of course, that, okay, she's dead. Why would she come back and visit me, But the visitation that he had, it wasn't negative. It wasn't scary. She was just in the room playing. They were having, he was playing with his toys, and she was showing him his different toys. They were just having a good time together, So he had that story. He had a few other stories that he would tell me about experiencing, seeing people who passed over that would come. But then even maybe 6 or 7 years before my dad made his transition, he would come back and he started telling me more stories about my grandmother, like when my dad's brothers had made their transition. Before anybody told her they passed away, she already knew. So when they called and say, Mama, we got something to tell you, so-and-so passed away, she said, I already know because they came and visit me and let me know they passed away. I'll just wait for you guys to give me a call. So this mediumship psychic ability, as I can see, is running through my family line.
Clearly. I mean, as you're having kind of this normal conversation that includes aspects of encountering ancestors and spirits and loved ones, were you also in a church-going environment at the same time? Was religious instruction very strong in your family?
Very much so. On my father's side was very strong Baptist and Methodist. Matter of fact, we got a lot of ministers and preachers back in the generation on my dad's side of the family. My mom's side was very strong Methodist. And then later on, my dad ended up becoming a Church of God in Christ pastor. And my mom and dad are divorced. Well, my dad's deceased now, but my mom and dad are divorced. And my mom has always been in the church and still is in the church. So my family is very, 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 very close connected with the church. Yeah.
So was there ever any point where there was a tension either for you within your family or church practices, or for you personally, where you felt that like your spiritual path was at odds with your church upbringing, or that it was challenging for you to embrace your gifts, or what did they kind of go hand in hand in a more positive dynamic?
I look at it this way. Seemed as though my grandmother were coming up during their time, this was more accepted. But looked like around the time I was coming up, maybe people were just getting to these, I call it newer, modern traditions, where it really wasn't accepted, and where when I was going to the holiness churches with my mom and dad, you know, they look at this being evil. So I thought, you know, not realizing that something was wrong, this was evil, okay? And I remember, it's amazing because even though when I was a teenager, I was drawn to metaphysical things, and then I was told at the same time, be careful with that because it's witchcraft, okay? And I remember when I was getting to the point of holistic eating, when I was like 17 or 18 years old, and one of the first persons I give credit to, Dr. Drew Pookrum, I used to listen to her show. Oh, my God, that's probably back in the 80s. And I remember she talked about reincarnation, some of the different things that was totally taboo. But I was drawn to her, and I remember I was getting to the natural foods, the health foods. I go to the health food store, and I went to event at a health food store that ended up having a psychic fair. And I remember walking, and in the back, I remember the lady said, in the back, that's where we have all our psychics that are reading. Well, because of, I thought anything related to mediumship or psychic was evil, I was afraid to go back there. And I remember I had to go to the restroom, and I asked where the restroom at. They said, right straight back near where you had to pass through the psychics. And I was like, ooh, I don't know, I want to do that. So I did a beeline to the restroom and beeline out.
That's funny because that's the most common thing that I hear from people is this suspicion, oh, I don't know nothing about that. I don't want to get into anything that's going to cause me some problems. And it's very much a fear kind of, if you even explore this, you're jeopardizing a kind of like your salvation. So you're talking about you didn't even want to be in the hallway or in the room with something, right? But the similarities between church process, holiness is is a pretty lively church experience. So there's speaking in tongues, right, and prophetic deliverance and things of that. It's interesting because now I see all of these people channeling on YouTube and stuff, and they're saying they're channeling light language. And I'm like, the first time I heard somebody do that, I said, well, that's speaking in tongues. What do you mean that's light language? And I said, oh, okay. I guess I get it. I get it now. So it kind of, shifted my perspective. But they're cousins.
I remember going to revivals back in the day when I were coming up, where they had this preacher that was known that could, basically what he's doing, mediumship and psychic reading. Preacher would come and he would get up there and he would call somebody out and tell them their address and their name and maybe whatever struggle they're going through in their life, and then he would lay his hands and pray on them and people would get happy, whatever. And he was known to do that. But it was okay. They didn't call it psychic mediumship. They called it something like discerning of the spirit. They had a different name. So I remember going to revivals like that where, Reverend so-and-so is coming into town and you were spooked a little bit because you was like, okay, we know that he gets up and preach, and he gets down the aisle, and he'll call you out, and he'll tell you about your life situation, and at the end, he'll lay his hands on you because you spooked a little bit, like, oh, he could call me out and tell me all my business in front of, these 500 people that are sitting in the audience. But that's what some of the revivals, that's just exactly what they did, I've been in revival services where somebody may had attachment on them, and the preacher would come down to remove the attachment off the person. Same thing if you're doing shaman or spiritual work, So I grew up, in other words, I grew up seeing all of that, which I look now, which were like my different learning or stepping stones to get me where I'm at now. So, yeah.
Now, did you ever, while you were in your, I guess, church time period, did you actually then manifest your spiritual gifts in the service or as a deacon or prophet or as a church role? Or were you just kind of participating in the worship of church and not,
I
as a vehicle?
I participated, but what happens when I was growing up as a kid, I would have dreams a lot. And a lot of times when I would have dreams, it was a lot about, somebody who died or people who had died. And it used to scare me at night because I couldn't sleep, wouldn't sleep the light on. I'm running downstairs. At the time, the house that we lived in was a 2-level house, and I remember running downstairs, telling my mom I couldn't sleep at night, and she's like, why you can't sleep at night? And I swear there was a casket or a dead person sitting up in my room, or I would hear noises. I remember we had several pets that had died that were dogs, and I remember them coming back. I'm sleeping at night, about 2 o'clock in the morning. I hear their footprints coming up the stairs, come up by my bed. And then when I set up, I couldn't see the dog. I wasn't afraid because that was my doggie. I was in love with the doggie, and I was very sad when the dog had made his transition. And I remember one of the dog's name was Pepper, and I remember it about 2 or 3 o'clock, and heard his dog come upstairs, and came near the bed, and I set up, and I was like, Pepper, Pepper, and I was like, okay, Then I would tell my mom the morning, Pepper came and visit me. My mom like, no, he didn't come and visit you. You were dreaming that. No, Ma, I really wasn't dreaming that. I woke up, and I heard his feet. He came up the stairs like he always do, and he came and sit by the bed, but I just couldn't see him. So I was having little things like that as a kid. And a teenager, I was experiencing things like that. Another thing I first started experiencing, my great uncle, who I also give credit to help open up the door, one I had talked to all the time about, he was telling about spirits and dead people and his sister and the mediums and things like that. He always said that I'm going to have to get used to understand about death because death is a part of life. And that I'm going to have to understand about spirits are real and there is a part of life. And he always used to tell me, he says, they're around you all the time. You just can't see them, And he said some people have the gift they can see them. Some people have the gift they can feel them, And he was saying, and he was teaching me basically and not having fear of death. And he was saying, because he was up in his 70s, he was saying before long, you're going to have to come through the funeral home and view me, and you can't be scared. You're going to have to be a big boy about it. And and I'm seem like I'm jumping around. I just got so much information. But even him, he had little experiences. It was like if a neighbor in the neighborhood or a friend of his is getting ready to make their transition, a dog would come on the back of his porch and it will howl 3 times. And that's a symbol for him, let him know that somebody's getting ready to make their transition. And I remember he would, if the dog did that, he would make a comment like, yeah, dog howled last night. Somebody getting ready to pass another 2 or 3 days. And it always happened. Somebody up the street had passed, maybe a relative has passed. So I remember that cycle. So when he was sick and he was diagnosed and he was with lung cancer, and when he was sick, and I remember probably the night or the night before, last 2 nights before he went into the hospital, and I remember we were sleeping at his house because at the time he was up in age, my great aunt was up in age, and my mother was like their daughter, and they came back from the hospital, and I remember sleeping in the back room, and I remember I heard the dog came up on the back, howl 3 times. When that happened, my uncle, about a day or 2 later, he made his transition. And then after he made his transition, I remember that night of his after we got word he made his transition, the very next night I was sleeping back in the same room, and I remember I looked up. The room had a lot of windows. I remember in the middle of the night, I looked up in the clouds, and I saw this round thing. It looked like a star and an angel, but it communicated to me that was him, letting me know that he's on the other side and he's fine. And I remember I told my mom the next morning, I said, Uncle Bill is fine on the other side because he came back as an angel. He was a star that was twirling around that window that was piercing through me, telling me that he was fine. At that time, I was like 12 years old. So I was having little experiences like that. Then after we had the funeral services, about a week later we were back at the house cleaning out the house and to move my aunt to our house because she was way up in age. She couldn't stay there by herself. And we slept in the house that night, and that night we slept, I heard a dog howl again 3 times. And I said, oh, well, Uncle Bill died. I can't think anybody else going to die. A couple of days later, my grandmother made her transition. So I was having those kind of experiences, like from 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah, just those kind of experience. Yeah, so so that's, I guess, in a long word, those were, as a young person coming up, I was having those kind of experiences, Yeah.
So how did you, I've got a couple different questions that I wanted to cover, but how did you then go from rushing past the room with the psychics because you were fearful that it would be a conflict for your religious faith to being a practicing and professional medium? I mean, I know there's a couple decades in the middle of that, but how did you begin to then embrace that this was something that was bigger than just an awareness, that it was actually something that you were going to be doing as a service offering?
Well, I always was searching what my purpose was here on this planet for many years. I think ever since I was a teenager, I had always asked the Creator, what is my purpose? And I remember one time there was a minister that prophesied over me, said something that my purpose would be like spiritual work. And, I'm thinking, like being a preacher or something like that, which I had thought about doing one time to be a preacher. And so I remember that. I was a teenager at that time. And it was that question, what is my purpose? By the time I was in my 20s, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? Then there was always a part of me that I knew that I was different, okay? I didn't think the same way everybody thinks. I didn't have the same interests. I was always drawn to spiritual stuff, just drawn to it, and maybe not understand why. But I always had that question, what is my purpose? You know, I would go back to school and try this field and try that field and try this. It did not work. So I was still, again, what is my purpose? I really was to the point figuring that, did I come here as a mistake? Because I can't vibe on the same vibration that average people. I can't do it. I tried, but I can't do it. So then again, I'm back asking the same question again. What is my purpose while I'm here? And then, of course, the higher self will speak and maybe say, well, you're here to do this and that. And then I'm like, no, that don't make no sense because that's really taking me out of my paradigm, you know. Well, I'm not going to go with that. That don't make no sense. So it was, kept asking, what is my purpose, what is my purpose? And one beautiful thing I'd like to bring up while I was searching, I was asking what is my purpose. Not only just what is my purpose, I was very curious as an African-American man, where did I come from? Where my culture? I got really deep into that because I said there's more to me than just a black man in America. So right around in my 20s, mid-20s to early 30s, I was really searching, finding who I was, my roots, my ancestors. What do they think? How did they get over here? You know, I mean, where I'm from. Because my other friends who non-African Americans pretty much know their background, their history, how they got here. They can go trace the generations back. I couldn't do that. Okay? And that bothered me, so it made me almost feel like, okay, you don't know what your purpose is. You almost like you're a misfit in America. So it was all those things going on. And then I finally, I was with a friend of mine who got involved with a spiritual group, as you see in my bio, with the EFOS system. And I happened to go over to his house, and I saw all of his shrines and things. As soon as I walked in the house, it was like I went home, okay? And then from there, I went for divination. And then, of course, when I went for divination, the first thing that came out, you're a medium. And at that time, I didn't know what a medium was. And I remember I questioned the priest. I said, what is a medium? He told me what a medium is. And I looked at him like, no, that's not me. I'm not communicating with no dead folks. And he looked at me. He laughed. He just laughed. I was like, yeah, I see. You don't understand this. But he said, this is who you are. This is what you came on the world to do. And I was looking at him like, yeah, I don't think so, you know. But at the same time, my mind going back to different experiences that I have had about what I just mentioned about. I thought, okay, yeah, that do kind of make sense, but no, I don't know about all that. So, but later on, through that, I did go through, now when I decided to go through the initiation, because one of the things came in the reading for me, the initiation into the Gungun Society, which deal with ancestors and spirits. Oh, wow. I think when I made that commitment I was going to do that, I had visitations just about ancestors and people on the other side, I think the whole time until that experience. And one of the most experience I had, I never, I was telling my mom yesterday, I never forget, was that the week I was leaving to go through the initiation process, my mother's people, I saw my mother's people that was on the slave ship, came to me. There were two women. They were chained up, came to me at night. I knew them just like I knew my next door neighbor, my coworker, my mother. I knew them, and I looked at them and I said, I know you guys. And they had their tribal markings, which they were Yoruba people. And I looked at them, I looked at their faces, I saw them in chains. And then we got to a certain distance through this experience. I saw my mom and me sitting on a smaller boat that was on the shore of America. So with that experience, I'll never forget that. And when I went through the initiation process, and at the very last day when they did all the divination, tell you where your family, where you come from, first thing he mentioned that about the women coming from Yoruba, from Nigeria, from Yoruba. And I told him, I saw him. He said, yeah. He says, because they initiated you before you got here. You just came here for the procedure. So.
That is one of the aspects that I wanted to delve into in your journey, because you do, you are a priest of Ifa system, and you also have undergone shamanic training underneath another shaman for a period of time. And one of the things that when you add the layer of, okay, there's many ways that people express their psychic gifts. And you will see people doing mediumship, and then there are different belief systems that some people also then participate in with their spiritual gifts. So, for example, you may be clairvoyant but practice Wiccan, or do earth-based manifestation work, or you might follow ancestral practices such as Ifa, or even Santeria, or Vodou, any number of practices, even shamanic, which is kind of, in the generic sense, Native American. Of course, each tribe has their way of viewing the shaman work, but overall, those are just small details. The larger practice is very much the same. And as you look to the oldest of cultures, the further we go back towards indigenous level practices, you find that there is a continuity of connection between the living and the ancestors. And I think that in the practices of African ancestral systems, such as Ifa, have gotten a bad rap, because what we see are things like, oh, this is a voodoo priestess, and this is bad, and this is animism, or, there's all manner of fear-mongering, even beyond what you see from the break from traditional religion. I know myself, when I first came into awareness of voodoo, of course, was movies as a child, but then when I was in high school, I went to Haiti for a trip with my father, and then came to understand about how the African practices merged with the Catholic and Christian practices to kind of present the Divine Mother or the Divine Father in different faces, or what they call syncretization, which merges the older ways with the more modern Christian practices as kind of a way for the political systems of the day to use the influence of people's individual practices. So, wise women have been going to the woods and gathering herbs, and the wise elders have been making sacrifices and working with the elements of the rain and the sun and Father, Sky, Mother Earth, across all cultures for thousands of years before we developed the rather newer systems that now predominate our culture. And I think it's interesting because, if anything, the religious church would probably have more conflict with your Ifa than, per se, your psychic gifts, because of the misunderstanding about what it means to follow an ancestral practice. Would you say that that's kind of a fair summary of how ancestral practices are viewed?
Yeah.
it's so interesting to me because there is a cultural preservation, right? One thing that I notice is if you get into people who are ancestral practicing and shaman practicing, that is where you find more men in balance. So there are plenty of shaman, masculine expressions out there, priests who are teaching, leading, fulfilling their duties and roles as gender defines them. But when you take off that kind of tenor and get just into strictly mediumship or your generic, then the number of males drops significantly. And I'm not sure what the corollary, why that is, but to say that there are fewer male psychics of African American heritage is actually wrong, because I've been in communities where they're filled with rooms with psychically strong and aware and connected to spirit African males, but they're not sitting at a psychic fair and saying, come sit down with me and have a reading.
Yeah, I know with the EFA system, which is, in a sense, a closed system where it's pretty much kept in the community. And when I was involved with the EFA system, like you said, I saw, all the men and the women that were priests or priestesses, all of them could read, psycho. That was just common, But far as, since I'm outside the system doing my own thing, like you said, at fairs and that, no, I don't see the men at the fairs and that. But I know with the EFOS system, it's usually a pretty much closed system. They just pretty much work in their particular groups together. And if somebody from the outside needs to have a reading done, I know the house that I was in usually, let's say somebody from outside, I knew they needed to have a reading done because they were having some situation that was going on in their life. I would go back and talk to my godparents and say, hey, I have somebody, they're not part of the circle per se, but, they have this issues and that issues going on. And I had to get permission, and sometimes they have to go to divination if they should let this person to read this person, sometimes, So, but as long as I get permission, it's, bring the sister or the brother, they can come over and we can schedule a reading for them, and because that's what happened to me. And the person would come over to the priest or the priestess home, and they would do the divination and do the reading. So it's set up differently, So, and yeah.
Now, in terms of in that particular system, is it exclusive in terms of if you're not African American, you would not necessarily be able to receive a reading, or is it just more about the spiritual permission for this person to receive the reading?
Well, I wouldn't say they're exclusive just to African Americans. Really, the EFA is for everybody.
Okay. So it was a multicultural group of people. It was not a...
Well, the group I was... Well, I would just say the group I was with was predominantly... Well, it was basically all African American. But there are some groups out there that do open up to other groups of people, from my understanding.
Okay. Now, if you sum up, what's the Cliff Notes version of an ancestral practice like Ifa? What is it that is unique or stands out about this kind of way of working and approaching spirit as opposed to less structured, because it is a system, as you said.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely a system.
So how does, I know you can't get deep into things, but so when one says, I want to enter the system, what happens? What is the experience of an individual who then wants to explore further down that path?
Well, this is how, with me, for me, I can tell you about my experience because everybody else, other people's experiences are different. I was always curious. Again, I was asking universal questions: who am I? What is my purpose? Where did I come from? Where did my ancestors, where did my people come from? These are questions I was asking through the years. And you know how the universe does it, events just showed up. It just so happened that one of a friend of mine who got involved into the system first before I didn't know anything about it. I just so happened went over to visit him and saw his candles and different little shrines set up. When I walked in the house, I instantly felt at home, didn't even know anything about the system. And then I had asked him some questions, and he would answer some of my questions. And basically he had to go and get permission because I was curious. I mean, my antenna went up. I was really, really just curious. So, yeah, for me, he went and got permission, and then from that, I went and I met a priest, and the priest gave me a reading, and it was a reading about, I think, an hour and a half long, and it was a great reading, and it just went from there, Then I went, I guess, back for another reading, and then things start showing up. That's how I got into it. It was just different events, and then next thing I know, okay, I had to go and be initiated. So, and that's what happened.
So during the process of initiation and then instruction, is that where you receive learning about connecting with ancestors differently, or did you enhance your psychic gifts by the things that you do?
Yeah. Well, how I tell people how we look at ancestors, even from, if you want to say from an African point of view, they're your guardian angels. There are people that a lot of times the people, grandmother, grandfather, mother, father, or great aunts, people who loved and cared about you when they was on this side, and they are, I say on the other side, they're still here. You just can't see them with your natural eye, but they're still here. They still sit around you. And I look at them as my guardian angels, my helper, when I'm going through some things or trying to change a different path. They're your messengers, they look out for you. They support you. And, yes, the question you had asked, I definitely was a different person after going through initiation. Definitely the mediumship, which was more heightened. It's you definitely will see things even more different. It's like through an experience. It's hard to describe. It's just you have to experience it. If that makes sense. Yeah.
It does. It's tantalizing, but I know that what you're talking about is also a pretty involved time and intensive experience as well. It's not like a weekend workshop, right?
No. It's
in your spiritual growth.
It's like a lifetime of growth, a lifetime of a lifetime of learning. Through this whole process, I'm still learning more about myself. And basically, all this basically ties to take you back to understand your life purpose yourself, getting you to know yourself. And that's how I view what religion or any spiritual system is. It's going back to learn yourself. Who is Preston? You know. And these different paths you take, or these journeys that you take, if you decide if you want to be a Christian or you're Hindu or a Muslim or you're Ifa or you're shaman or you're just the person in the backyard, the different paths that you just take is to tie back into who you really are. Who is Preston? What abilities does Preston have? Okay, I look at you tying back to your higher self, and when you open up into your higher self, you'll be amazed, and you're so connected with the universe, you'll be amazed of all the things you have access to, like seeing the spirits, talking to the spirits. And even besides when I'm learning shaman, your trees, I talk to my trees in my backyard, the sky, the animals that's out there. You'll be surprised how, because everything is living. Trees are living, stones are living, the grass is living. When you talk to them, they respond back to you. And that's something that we have lost. That's something that our ancestors, no matter what culture you're in, had so close connection with Earth. And you talk to the Earth. You talk to Mother Earth. You talk to the ground. You talk to dirt. You talk to the trees. You talk. And messages come out. And sometimes you may be, in your mind, you might be thinking about, I need to do this, need to do that. Just being out there in nature, the message comes to you. Look up at the sun, the message comes to you. Everything vibrates. Everything wants to communicate. And I think that's one of the worstest things that happen to us when we disconnect ourselves from nature and looking at things from the outside, or this outside, some outside force that's up in the air that's supposed to help us.
You know, it is interesting because along with the whole conflict of jeopardizing your salvation because of dabbling in supposed psychic gifts and arts, that's like a major fear sticking point. Another major challenge is what happens after we die. And I have a dear friend who I know her mother is around her. She feels her mother. She heard her mother's footsteps. I mean, I know it's her mother. She does not believe that it's her mother. And her whole conflict is, well, when she died, how is she not in heaven? Or it says in the Bible the dead are asleep, and they know no more until the final judgment. And so she's having a religious conflict about it, but then also her mind, she said, well, if my mama, she really didn't care that much about me in life, why would she be around me now? And my statement is, well, don't you think if she's a spirit, she would be a little more evolved to learn that to be and to have an opportunity to be around you in spirit to give you the nurturing support that her incarnated self may not have been developed enough to be able to give you? Why would you not think she would do better in the afterlife than in the current life? But she just doesn't have a belief system that allows her to accept. But she definitely keeps feeling touches and cold breezes and air and footsteps and you know, things of that nature. But the fear matrix is really significant.
Well, I had several people in the past that I have read similar situation like you were mentioning about a friend of yours, where they came to get a reading and their mother or their father came out first, and they'll look at me like, well, that's interesting because I really didn't have a relationship with them because maybe this factor, that factor. And I remember one was still angry with her mother because they just did not get along on this side. And she's like, I can't believe she'll be the first person to come out. And I said, well, first of all, she recognized maybe the difficulties you guys had in the relationship. Now she's like, okay, if I didn't maybe support you enough on this side, but guess what? I'm on the other side now. I know better, or I'm healed from whatever situation I'm dealt with, and I'm going to be here with you, support you, and help you on your journey. And not only just that, it helps to heal. So if, and like I mentioned to her, if you open up to have that relationship with your mother, and she may not be here physically, but she's here on the other side. And I hate to say the word other side. They still exist. It's just that you just can't see them.
Right.
But if you have that relationship with her, that can heal the pain or whatever situation that you dealt with when she was in flush, so you can move on with your life. And another thing, too, you said that she was having problems with dealing with the afterlife or what's it like on the other side. Well, I had an experience. I had two cousins who made that transition not at the same time. One was a cousin on my father's side of the family, and another one was a cousin that was more kind of related on my mother's side of the family. One died in her 40s of cancer. The other one had a heart attack, and he was in his early 50s, okay? And for me, being who I am, one night they came to me with a very vivid dream, said, we want to take you to the other side so you can see what the other side looked like. And I went on that journey, okay? And from what they showed me on the journey, it was another world just like this world, okay? I remember they took me to an area where it was like a large school, and these children were playing outside. And these were kids who made that transition like they was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and they was in the school at the playground, was playing and being nurtured and happy. Then we were walking down the street, and other people walking down. It looks like how it looks over here, and but the difference about over there, everybody was at peace. And I mean, that experience lasted through most of the night, and I was like, wow. And I know they took me to the other side because they told me they were going to take it to the other side, and I have faith, and I believe that, you know. And so I'm like, wow, you know, and and everybody was well, everybody was happy, everybody was looking good, and I was like, okay.
You know, a lot of people though they say, well, I can't believe that because that means I don't believe in Jesus and my church, you know, so it kind of cuts them off from that because they think, well, if my loved one was saved or was in the good place, then they're in heaven, and that heaven is a place then that is not accessible. Once you're there, you're behind the pearly gates, and you don't go back. You know, it's kind of like a finite, close the door, Archangel Michael kind of
like
thing.
That too.
Right. Or the dead are asleep and they'll wake at the second coming when, you know, the trumpet sounds and all the bodies will come up. You know, there's people who don't want to get cremated because they're like, I need my body for the last day. You know, it's very, very interesting how belief systems start to definitely shape our experiences, you know.
Right.
It seems to me like the common message that is always received from benevolent spirit, be it loved ones or angelics or higher guidance, is that fear is not something that we are supposed to be subject to. It seems like and fear and grief and sadness. It's all a matter of our perspective, and they're always inviting us to enlarge our perspective beyond that, which is negative, and see that, well, they're not gone. They're still here. Or you have a whole team of people or beings helping you. You're not as alone as you think you are, and you're not as you haven't fallen as short as you think you have. That you're actually doing pretty good. That seems to be like a common thing that I hear repeatedly, is the assurance that comes from a reading.
Can I tell you some other experience that I have?
Oh, yeah.
There's times that somebody, and I had a friend of mine used to do this until I caught on. If someone would make the transition, her family, she would want me to come to the funeral home or to the family hour, and I would go. And I would go because I was real close to friends, her not because I really wanted to go, but I would go. And then when I would go, and we're sitting in the room with the bodies laid and the people coming in and viewing, and after a minute or so, I started seeing smoke around the casket. So for me, when I start seeing smoke, then I know there's a connection, And then all of a sudden, I remember it was her great aunt who had passed away. And I remember all of a sudden I was sitting there, then hear my head get a little dizzy, and I saw smoke, and I was thinking to myself, all right, here we go. And then I saw the image of her sitting on her casket, smiling and happy and in peace. And the communication she was giving back to me, my family shouldn't be crying. They shouldn't be. She said, first of all, I am so happy that I'm well loved, that everybody comes to remember me. But on the other hand, I'm so doggone happy. And just whoever's open to this, let them know that I'm happy and don't be worried about me. Don't be crying. I love them just as much as they love me, and I'm so glad they all came to see me. They love me. But she was just in total, it was totally happiness, just like somebody won $1 million. That's what and I still may not be. It was just, and I could feel it. I could feel the happiness. It was like eternal happiness, something that you just don't feel here. It was like eternal happiness. So I had that experience, and then maybe about 2 years later, another cousin of hers had died, and I knew her very well. And she had lupus, and she passed away right around about 50 or 51. And I went to her funeral. And then after the funeral, we came back to the church for the family dinner. And again, her presence came around me. She was totally happy. And she says, I know, she was saying to me, she said, I know you understand, my family don't understand, but maybe you can talk to one of my family members and let them know that I'm happy. I'm free. I'm happy. Okay? So the experience that I experienced with spirits on the other side, the benevolent spirit, they're happy. I have my great aunt who had passed away, who came to visit me one night. She came to visit me because I was going through some personal things in my life. I was depressed. I was going through some personal things. I was laying in bed. I had tears in my eyes. She came to me, checking on me, and I'm looking at her. I'm asking her, well, what's it like on the other side? And she looked at me, smiling like, I'm fine. You got the problem. I don't.
Right.
So, baby, I came here to check on you. And I'm like, oh, okay. She said, and then she told me, she said, baby, everything is going to be all right. And she was right. The very next day, things I was worried about turned over and everything was all right. So these visitations with spirits or the spirit world, their love, their peaceful, their kindness, they're your support. Yeah.
Now, when you provide readings now, are most of your clients coming to you for mediumship services?
Usually, most of the time they do. I mean, some of them come maybe just see what the future is going to be like for them, and then some of them will come and say, okay, just tell me what you see, and some will come and say, hey, I have a loved one that had passed on, that see if you can connect. The ones that are hard, what I mean by hard, because you feel the pain, is somebody's life was taken. Those are hard because you can feel the pain of the family and pulling that loved one through. Again, when you get that loved one pulled through, even though how they went was tragic, from my experience, the ones I dealt with, they're at peace on the other side. So usually the message they tell me to tell the family is that they're at peace. I had a situation, this has happened, maybe about 15 and 16 years ago. A coworker of mine, son was involved in a situation, lost his life at 18 years old, okay? And I had just got through being initiated into the Gungun. And I came back to work, and then I heard the sad news about her son. It was back then. The situation was tragic. It was on television, and when she came back to work, I walked by near her desk to go to the men's room, and when I walked past her desk, something in my stomach was bothering my stomach real hard. In other words, his energy was bothering me real hard, and it was telling me, you go back and tell my mother I'm okay. And I'm like, first of all, I don't know your mother that well, and everybody's not open to this, and I'm at work at the same time too. This is not going to work. And the fear part of me, like, I'm not going to tell this lady she's grieving already, and then I'm going to go and tell her, your son just came to me and told me that he's all right and she's already grieving. I said, I'd be lost my job. That was going on in my mind, So by the time I got to the men's room, I was almost sick as a dog because his energy was so strong. So then I came out the men's room, and then I walked by the desk again, and the energy stayed on me. Then I went back to my desk. Brother man just did not let me just sit still. So I finally said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to figure out something so I can get this up off of me. So I went near her desk, and there was somebody, another coworker was talking to her. I said, oh, good, that's an alibi. I could just go back to my desk. Her phone rang, okay? She picked up her phone. She said, nobody's on the phone. And then I was standing there, and the coworker was standing there, and then her phone rang again. And then this other coworker was standing there, said, well, somebody's trying to get in contact with me. Maybe I need to go back to my desk. And I looked, I'm like, yeah, same thing. So I walked back towards my desk, and then I felt him again. And then I put him to the challenge. I said, okay. I said, well, if you really think I need to go say it to your mother, make that phone ring again. Her phone rang for the third time. She picked up the phone, said, oh, nobody's here. And I was like, damn. So I said, okay. He said, now tell my mama that I'm fine, and that whoever did this, they're gonna find out by tomorrow. So I said, okay. So anyway, I said, well, I hugged her, and I said, well, I just need to tell you something. I said, I know I'm different from people, and things are different, but I however did, I slid into it perfectly, and I told her, I said, well, I told her, I think I might tell her, I said, well, I feel things is different, and I said, I don't know if you're open, whatever. She looked at me, and she had a big smile on her face. She says, okay. She said, tell me what you need to tell me. And she was smiling and real relaxed. I was like, okay. I said, well, I feel, and I started describing her son. I said, well, your son is this and then she looked at me, she said, yeah, that's him, that's him, that's him. And she said, he's very fiery, he's very this, he's going to make sure he get his word out, he's very that. And then I said, well, he told me to tell you that he's fine on the other side, and whoever calls the situation, the case will be solved. She got up and she hugged me, and she thanked me for that, and she said, you just don't know. I've been laying in my bed and praying every night to God for somebody to find that person who committed that crime to my son. The very next day on television, I think the young man turned himself in.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that,
so I know it's real.
Moments like that are, again, when they show the little lady Long Island medium on TV, she's always cold reading people in places, and that's really, people don't have an idea of that's not something that you just go around easily interrupting someone's day to say, oh, by the way, your Uncle Joe is here. And I got a message for you. That's not something most mediums, again, it's scripted reality how it goes on TV. But, usually she displays that the spirit is definitely worrying her, like, I need you to go ahead and do this. And she kind of struggles a little bit before she winds up engaging the person in conversation. But it can be very challenging because it's not like this is a client who has called you personally and said, I want to do this right now. It's a lot different out in the wild, so to speak. But when a person... Well, I was saying for a person who's never had... Well, a person who's never had a mediumship reading before, how would you advise them to necessarily be prepared or what to think about before they come to a medium such as yourself? How can a person have the best reading possible in conjunction with the gifts and the messages that you have opportunity to bring?
Be open and be relaxed. Not have fear. I'd say not have that Hollywood fear or that maybe Bible thumping fear. It's being relaxed and trust. Yeah.
And your gifts, you talk about, we tend to talk about the clairs, the 5 clairs. So you hear spirit in our clairaudient. And you see, so you're also clairvoyant. You see actual, so you can describe someone with a vision. And then clairsentient, so you feel the feelings, of, like you said, of the loved ones and the person themselves. And did you...
And I can smell certain scents, too.
Oh, clairgustance. Okay.
Yeah, they wear certain perfumes.
That one is much more rare.
Really? Yeah,
that one's more rare with the smell. Like you'll get the smell, but there are some people who, even more rare, they say is the taste, where you'll get a taste in your, one lady.
I had that done
She
too.
asked, who likes margaritas here? Because she's like, I'm tasting margarita salt in my mouth. Somebody here likes margaritas. I don't think I would want to have that gift because what if I don't like what you give me the plate? Aunt Lois always like liverwurst. Why am I tasting liverwurst? I don't want to do that, you know.
I have that, sometimes I have that taste if I'm reading somebody and then somebody's loved one who was a really, really good cook. And I remember one lady I read, I think her grandmother did really good. It was either barbecue or something. And I was reading her, because first I saw her grandmother and she said, yeah, that's my grandmother. Then all of a sudden I started tasting it. Ooh, it was good. I like soul food. I was tasting some barbecue. And she laughed and she said, she can tear up some barbecue. And I got hungry for that second. I wanted some ribs.
That's funny. Now, you also did go to, in addition to studying Ifa, you also went to a local psychic development school here in Atlanta. How long did that take, and what was your experience? Was it helpful to you in terms of understanding and working with your gifts more?
Yeah, I studied for the psychic development under Carl Woodall, and that was very helpful. It helped me to how to balance it, because I found a lot of time in my life I was just so open that I was being bombarded by everything, because I was feeling everything on the planet. I can feel when the sun's coming up. I can feel when the sun is going down. I can feel. That's another thing. I had to be very careful because I'm so sensitive. I'm so empath. If my coworker didn't have a good evening and they bring it to work and I'm coming in fresh and feeling good, next thing I know, what they're feeling attached to me, or if a coworker came to work and feeling really, really excited, and then they get around me, then all of a sudden I'm really excited. So that's one thing I had to really, what I learned in that class, really how to protect myself, because it was to a point where I was feeling too much of everything, where on the other side of it, it was driving me crazy because I was feeling too much of everything. And and then I was to a point that I didn't want to go to a mall. I didn't want to go to a store. I just wanted to come home, not really socialize, just stay in my house. So I'm really so thankful for the psychic development, for teaching me how to balance the energies out and also how to use it properly, just like you said, not me just walking up down the street and just give somebody impromptu readings like I see this and see that, but the ethics that goes behind it,
Right.
And, so I'm very, very, I would encourage anybody who knows that you're open and you have abilities to be a medium, be a psychic, and or going through people who are out there who not. There's a lot of people who are out there who doesn't realize they are empath, okay? And they feeling all these different emotions that's making them depressed, making them this way, making them that way. And you're feeling maybe yourself a little bit different or stand off from society. That's a good class and to take to see what's going on with yourself, to open up yourself and to learn how to understand yourself and to how to balance it. And that's one of the beautiful gifts I've received out of the class, and I'm so thankful for Carl for that class, is to the balance, because now I walk around, I'm balanced. I can go into a mall. I can go into a grocery store,
Right.
I can and be comfortable and not being hit by every energy just coming through. So that was, for me, that was a lifesaver for me. Yeah.
Yes. That's, I think, the most common thing that people discount as an actual psychic hit is their empathy connection to people. A lot of people say, as soon as that person came in the room, the energy shifted. Well, you just psychically read that person.
Exactly.
They'll say, there's just something about that person, their energy, I just don't trust them, they're hiding something. Well, you just used your psychic gifts, right? But most people say, that's not that, that's just my gut feeling or whatever. Or why do I get, like you said, why do I get depressed whenever this depressed person comes in? A lot of people just don't have an awareness. And it kind of made me giggle when you said that, because the thing I learned is to ask, is this mine? Is this me? And then my guidance will come through and let me know, no, this isn't your sad feeling. Like, I paused, like, why am I feeling so sad, like I need to cry and watch a sad movie right now? And I'm like, wait, is this me? No, it's not me. And then I can, better manage it. And, of course, we up our protections and say that which is not ours does not attach to us, so to speak,
Yeah.
But
and that's one
I think that's the most common psychic gift, honestly.
It is. And that's one of the things I used to suffer from a lot as growing up. As a teenager, a lot of times I was severely depressed. And even in my 20s and 30s, I would go through stages was like really just down out depressed. And a lot of times what it wasn't that really I was picking up on everybody's vibration, not understanding about me being an empath, not understanding that. So I remember one time I talked to my doctor, was thinking about, okay, maybe I need to get on some kind of antidepressant, So I didn't understand how to block myself, or I didn't have the knowledge about really being an empath, what that's like, about blocking or anything like that. I was just being pushed around by whatever the flow that was going on. So, psychic development course, I think, for anybody who's open to it, it's a great thing to take.
Well, it's just been such an interesting conversation. We're just in the last few minutes of our interview here.
Okay.
For people who want to get in contact with you now, do you see people in virtual space or person space? Is it just in the Atlanta area, or are people able to contact you from anywhere in the world in order to get services from you?
Well, let me give you, is it okay if I can give them my...
Absolutely.
My Gmail.
Absolutely.
Okay. They can contact me through email through pcook196650 @gmail.com.
Okay. And you are definitely... You read at different fairs in town here in Atlanta, and then you also do phone readings as well?
I don't really at this moment do phone readings.
Okay.
I'm usually a person. I like to see people close up. Yeah.
Well, for those of our listeners who are in the Atlanta area, I'm really excited to share that this weekend on Sunday is the Viberary Elevation Station. Now, elevation stations are pop-up events that I host around the metro area, and they feature high vibe and holistic products and services, people who are making and crafting from their own creative gift space, and also readers and psychics, astrologers, people who are sharing of their spiritual gifts. And so it's kind of like a psychic fair holistic expo wrapped into one. And this Sunday, that will be taking place at the Cupcakery in East Point, Georgia. And I'm so excited. Preston is one of the readers that will be on hand offering services. I know you've had some people already fill out time slots, but you do still have some openings, Preston. And so I'd invite anyone who wants to come to have a reading with you to come out and join the Good Vibe Tribe. You can find out all the details on the Viberarian Facebook page. And also then, the Blue Barn, the first of the month up in Roswell, Georgia. Preston, you're a frequent contributor there. Yeah. And if anyone is interested in also finding out other places that you will be, definitely reach out and email Preston at the information provided. And I am hoping that you will be offering some teaching from your knowledge to the Viberary community at some point, because I feel like you have some things as far as managing empathy and mediumship that are probably needful for us to know. So I hope that you'll come back and teach us something more at some point.
Okay. Okay.
Do you have
Okay.
Do you have any closing kind of advice, either from Spirit or from your personal wisdom, to anyone who might be listening and thinking that they heard something familiar in your story? Any advice that you would like to give them in terms of discovering further who they are?
One advice I always tell people is to love one another. One thing about this mediumship, have compassion. I remember I went to see Dalai Lama maybe about 7, 8 years ago in Emory, and his topic was about compassion. This planet needs love and compassion, for others. One thing about me doing this mediumship of psychic is when you hear the different people's stories, because so many people are going through different journeys, different situations, it makes me even more compassionate towards others. And feelings towards others and compassion and that special space of love. And that's to me what is so important. And I guess that's just the last words I just say is that love one another and have compassion for each other, because, I mean, that itself can change the whole world. You talk about why do we have to wait until we die and go to this heaven where you can have it right here? We can. I believe we can have it right here. So
absolutely.
That's just what I want to leave with, yeah.
That's absolutely true. I think about how you said that our loved ones, our ancestors are around us, our guides and angels, they're around us. They're not away somewhere. They're just kind of outside of our vision in some cases.
Right.
And I think the same space that they occupy is the same opportunity to see the connected and compassion of the living who are around us as well. It's really just about opening your eyes to seeing them and coming into awareness instead of being oblivious and blind or turning a purposeful blind eye to those around us in spirit and in truth.
That's right.
So
you'll be amazed.
I really
You'll be amazed. Yeah. When you go and
really
learn about yourself.
You.
Okay.
Well, I really appreciate you joining the
Okay.
show this evening. Yeah, I definitely hope. Now, for those of you tuned in, every Tuesday is the Psychic Inside show, and we've got some great guests lined up in the coming weeks. We've got Dr. Scheherazade Taylor, owner of Synchronicity Bookstore at one point here in Atlanta, and also we've got, I've got so many people, I can't even think. I've got 5 people already lined up for the coming weeks. And then on Thursday evening is the Viberarian show, and that's where I get to have a conversation about different subjects. We've talked about divination, channeling, the moon. This week we're going to be talking about 2018 and what it means to have this be a Master 11 year. We know that numbers have vibration, and this is a hugely powerful time. And Thursday we're going to sit down and talk about what 2018 means and how to use the energetic opportunity that's presented to us. So in the meantime, this week and as you go out into the world, I do wish for you all of the blessings that you can possibly hold in your arms until they overflow and spill out onto the world that is around you. I absolutely recognize your light, Preston, and the light in each of us who are here connected this evening, and I honor you in this moment and thank you for spending this time with us.
I honor you
Namaste.
too, and I everyone else too. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, thank
All right.
you. Have a good evening. Good night, everyone.
You too. All right. Good night.